I'm Jude, 40, EMT in Colorado Springs, and a single dad to a girl who never asked for more than a place at the table. This past Christmas, my mother looked her in the eye and said, "There's no room for her this year. Maybe next." Sadie had brought the casserole, the gifts, and her best smile, and left with nothing but silence. And as her untouched plate sat cold on our coffee table, I realized something in me had shifted, for good. If this story finds you, tell me where you're listening from tonight. Christmas Eve, the kind of cold that stiffens your knuckles before you've even stepped out of the car. I was loading trauma bags into the ambulance bay behind Memorial when my phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. I wiped my glove across the screen, and there she was. Sadie, standing in our apartment hallway, green sweater tucked into black jeans, her curls pulled back with a silver clip. "Too much?" the caption read. I looked at the image longer than necessary, not because I didn't know the answer, but because I did. It wasn't too much. It was perfect. And somehow, I already knew it wouldn't be enough, for them. I thumbed a reply. "You look beautiful. Absolutely beautiful." No emoji. Sadie said I overused them. Her response came back immediately. "Grandma said dinner's still on." She sounded normal. I didn't reply right away. Inside, the ER was its usual tangle of blinking monitors and controlled chaos. My badge clipped against my chest as I checked the trauma board, short-staffed again. I was on a double for Christmas Day, same as the last 3 years. This time, though, Sadie was 16, licensed, and too grown to wait for permission. She'd asked to go to her grandparents' house alone. "I can drive now, Dad," she said 2 nights ago during dinner. "It's 30 minutes, broad daylight. Grandma said they're expecting me." She'd even practiced the sweet potato casserole from her great-grandmother's recipe, bought ingredients with her own allowance. I watched her hum as she stirred nutmeg into the mixture, like she was carving herself into something presentable. Still, I hesitated. "There might be black ice," I said lamely. "I'll go slow." "There'll be other drivers. I'll wear my seatbelt." "And it's Christmas," I added. She smirked. "That's why I'm going." I'd swallowed my objections and dialed Martha the next morning, hoping, maybe irrationally, that she would say something to change my mind. "Of course Sadie should come. It's Christmas," she said. Her tone carried that clipped formality she reserved for funerals and new neighbors. "It's a shame you'll be working. But I suppose someone has to." "Will there be room at the table?" I asked, not even knowing why the words came out the way they did. She gave a tight laugh. "There's always room for family, Jude." But there hadn't always been. Still, Sadie wanted this. Wanted them. By the time I made it back out to the bay, the sky had gone steel gray. Snow threatened on the horizon, but didn't quite commit. Sadie's second text came through as I was checking oxygen tanks. "Casserole covered and ready. Leaving soon." I typed back, "Drive careful. Roads might glaze over by 5. "Yes, Dad." Then, after a beat, "Thanks for letting me go." It was that last message that stuck with me, like she thought she needed permission to be part of them. I wrapped my scarf tighter and headed to the ambulance. The red lights flickered above the bay doors, bleeding into the frost-covered walls. My shift partner, Holly, leaned out of the passenger side window. "You're squinting like you just read your own eulogy," she said. I climbed in beside her. "Just thinking?" "About what?" I didn't answer. But what I was thinking about was how Sadie had walked out the door 10 minutes earlier with that green sweater tucked neatly, casserole in hand, cheeks rosy with hope. She smiled at me before she left and said, "I just want them to see me." And I smiled back, told her I loved her. Waved, didn't say the thing burning a hole in my throat. They already should. Back at the hospital, the shift rolled on. Patients lined the hallway. Paper charts clipped to doors. The smell of antiseptic hung beneath the faint whiff of burnt toast from the lounge. But the whole time, I kept glancing at my phone like it might buzz with something I couldn't name. Sadie was out there, driving toward people who once said she was a little too sensitive, toward a table that had always felt one chair too full when she arrived. My wallet thudded against my hip as I moved. I opened it quickly, like a tick. There it was, tucked behind my insurance card, the photo from a 4th of July when she was 5. Holding a sparkler, eyes lit like fireworks. She'd insisted on holding mine too, said she wasn't scared of fire anymore. That was the summer she stopped sitting at the kids' table, not because she was invited to, the adults, but because she started bringing a book and a folding chair. My pager buzzed. Call incoming. Cardiac alert. "Let's go," I said. Holly looked over. "You all right?" I nodded, pulling on gloves. "It's Christmas," I said. "What could go wrong?" The first patient came in before 10, second-degree burns from spilled gravy. The second was a man who'd had too much ham and not enough water, chest tight and anxious, asking if he could go home in time for the Packers game. I patched, stitched, calmed, reassured, moved on. But between every case, I checked my phone. 11:57 a.m. Sadie. "Made it. Helping with cranberry tarts." I stared at the message longer than necessary. Her words bounced with energy. No typos, no hesitation. I replied, "Good. Send me a picture if you can." She didn't. By 1:05, I'd set 2 broken fingers, helped intubate a child with croup, and assisted with a possible stroke. 1:26 p.m. Sadie. "Uncle Glenn brought some guests. Not sure who. Fancy shoes." I smiled at the screen. She had a way of describing people by their footwear. Said it told you everything you needed to know. I texted back, "You okay?" She didn't answer right away. Holly caught me glancing at my phone for the 3rd time in 15 minutes. "She doing all right?" "Seems fine," I said. "Helping in the kitchen." "She's good at that," Holly said. "Doesn't take up space, just helps." I didn't like how true that was. At 2:12, a child came in holding a half-melted plastic snowman, his mother trailing behind him in a panic. The snowman had been a gift. He'd tried to eat the glitter. While we cleaned him up and soothed her guilt, my phone buzzed again. 2:43 p.m. Sadie. "They added like 4 people. Friends from Glenn's work or something. I don't know. Mom's kind of twitchy." I typed, "Do you feel okay?" She answered, "Yeah, just busy. I'll text you after dinner." But I knew Sadie. Just busy wasn't how she normally talked. Her texts always had personality. Emojis, quips, observations. This felt like delay. Cover. I tried to refocus. We had a full board. The halls echoed with holiday music some intern had queued up. Cheery bells clashing against groans and beeping monitors. I grabbed a protein bar and shoved it in my mouth between cases. At 3:15, I got this. Sadie. "Dinner might start late. They had to add chairs. Uncle Thomas is trying to impress someone. LOL, LOL." That was her effort at normal. I started to type. Tell me if anything feels off, but deleted it. I didn't want to be the overbearing parent. She was 16, independent. This was what I was supposed to encourage. Right? By 4 o'clock, nothing. No text. No update. Not even one of her silent selfies of table settings or petulant cousins making faces behind crystal glasses. By 4:45, my stomach was a knot. I didn't even pretend to hide it anymore. Holly looked up from the nurse's station. "She go dark?" I nodded. "You want me to take your rotation for an hour?" I shook my head. "I'm probably overthinking." She raised a brow. "Sadie doesn't go quiet." Number she didn't. At 5:36, my phone buzzed. "Sadie. Heading home. Don't worry. Just that. No period. No emoji. No context. No photo. just a blunt dismissal of everything she'd hoped the day would be. My hands shook slightly as I tapped to call her. Voicemail. Again. I tried again. Same. I walked to the break room, fingers stiff, mouth dry. The scent of instant coffee and microwaved lasagna filled the space. I didn't sit. I stood there staring at the counter until the phone rang. Her name lit up. Sadie? I'm fine, she said. Her voice was steady. Too steady. What happened? I asked. There was a pause. Long enough I thought we'd lost connection. Then she said it. There just wasn't room. I closed my eyes, sank into a nearby chair. My knees didn't quite hold me. What do you mean? I asked gently. Not enough chairs? She gave a soft exhale but no laugh. I'll tell you later. I just wanted you to know I was driving home, that's all. You shouldn't be driving upset. I'm not upset, she said quickly. Too quickly. I'm fine, just wanted to go. Silence stretched between us. Are you safe? I asked. Yeah. Road's okay? Still dry. I heard music in the background, our Christmas playlist from home. Somehow that hit harder than anything else. I'll see you when you get back, I said. Okay? Yeah. I'm fine. Then she hung up. I stayed in the break room, staring at the blank screen. For the first time that day, I had no words, no explanations to soothe, no tasks to bury my thoughts. Just this. Hollow. I reached for a pen, the only thing in the cup by the fridge, and grabbed a napkin. I wrote slowly, in my worst all caps, "No room for her." Then folded the napkin and slid it into my back pocket. That sentence would stay with me longer than any medical case I handled that day. The hallway outside the ER break room was quieter than usual. Muted fluorescent light, scuffed tile, a faint echo of someone calling for transport 3 rooms over. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, my breath still uneven from the call that had just ended. Sadie was on her way home, but she hadn't told me why. Not really. I called back the second she hung up. This time she answered. Sadie, I said, my voice low. Tell me everything. There was a pause, just long enough for my chest to tighten again. Then a quiet inhale. I got there around 3, she began. Grandpa helped me carry the casserole in. He was nice. Asked if I'd gotten taller. I said no, just boots. I smiled despite myself. Martha, Grandma, was in the kitchen already kind of flustered. She had on the red apron, the one with gold pine cones. She remembered that detail. Sadie always remembered details, the ones no one else noticed. She looked at my outfit and said, "Green wasn't really my color," Sadie said, voice still measured. I said I liked it. She didn't respond. I gripped the phone tighter. She put me to work stirring the cranberry mix. Then Uncle Glenn came in with 4 people, all in suits, I guess from his firm. They were loud. Amanda looked surprised. I don't think she knew they were coming either. Did anyone introduce you? I asked. No. Silence. Did anyone speak to you? Not really. One guy thought I worked there. That landed in my gut like a stone. They started moving chairs around. Grandma pulled out the folding table from the garage and added it to the end of the main one. She asked me to grab extra plates, so I did. Sadie paused. I could hear her breathing. When it was time to eat, I stood there holding my plate. I was waiting. You know, like we always do. See where people sit so we don't take a seat someone else wants. You've always done that, I murmured. Too politely. Grandma looked around and said, "There's no room for her this year. Maybe next." I didn't breathe, not for a long few seconds, because she'd said it exactly like that. Word for word. Those were her exact words? I asked. Yeah, Sadie whispered, like I was the extra napkin that didn't match the set. My legs gave slightly. I slid down the wall of the hallway, crouching against the tile, the phone still pressed to my cheek. No one said anything? I asked. Uncle Glenn looked at his phone. Amanda sort of half smiled. Grandpa was busy carving the turkey, and the rest were already talking about stock options. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. She told me to take my plate into the kitchen, said it would be more comfortable there, less crowded. And did you? I asked. For a minute, I stood at the counter and tried to eat. But then Glenn's co-workers came in to grab drinks. They kept talking over me. One of them made a joke about how I must be the hired help sneaking dinner. Oh, Sadie. I didn't know what to do, Dad. I just stood there. I didn't even sit down. I just stood with the plate in my hand. And then Grandma came back in and said that maybe I should head out. That it was getting too hectic. And next year might be better. She said that? She did. That's when her voice broke. Just once, on the word her. She didn't cry, not fully, but there was a crack in the sentence that she couldn't patch. I put the casserole back in the fridge, left the gift bag on the counter, and walked out. No one followed me. No one asked if I needed directions, or if I was okay to drive. I shut my eyes. And I saw her, green sweater, holding a covered dish and a wrapped box. A girl trying so hard not to be a burden she disappeared entirely. Sadie cleared her throat. Anyway, I'm home now. Everything's okay. No, it's not, I said. My voice was rougher than I intended. Dad, you were 16, I interrupted. You made food, wrapped gifts, and went alone to a house that should have welcomed you. And they treated you like a stranger in your own family. She didn't respond. You deserve more, I added, and I'm sorry. I should have known better. It's not your fault, she said gently. You had to work. That excuse, the one she'd used since she was 10. I heard it now for what it really was, permission for other people to treat her as less. And that ends tonight. I'm fine, really, she said again. You don't have to do anything. But I do. I have to look her in the eyes again and know that I showed up after the damage, not before. I have to make sure this doesn't get buried, filed away in the archive of holidays that didn't go right. Because this wasn't a mishap. It was a message. I stayed there in the hallway, back against cold tile, phone still warm against my cheek. After a moment, I said, quieter now. Tomorrow, I'm taking the day off. Are you allowed to? I'll make it happen. She hesitated. Okay. We ended the call. I sat still, heart pounding, letting everything settle, then rise again. At some point, Holly walked by. She paused, saw my face, and didn't ask. She just kept walking. I pulled the napkin from my pocket, the one from earlier, still folded. I opened it. Read the words I'd written. No room for her. I turned it over and wrote something new on the other side. Then we built our own. The apartment was dark. Not just lights off dark, but the kind that settles in when no one's moved for hours. I closed the door gently behind me, careful not to let it click. My boots thudded against the mat, and I stood there for a second, letting the quiet press in. Past midnight. The hallway smelled like reheated ham and someone's pine-scented candle downstairs. I'd driven home slower than usual, not because of ice, but because I wasn't ready to see what this night had done to my daughter. The living room still held traces of effort. Our tiny tree glowed in the corner, half the lights working, the other half blinking like they'd given up halfway through. Sadie had hung the felt snowflake ornaments we made years ago, just the two of us, during that first Christmas after her mother passed. And on the coffee table, a paper plate, cold slices of ham untouched, a microwaved baked potato half-eaten, an empty mug, a napkin, folded once, perfectly, and never used. Next to it was a single chair, pulled away from the table like someone had sat down but didn't stay. I didn't speak. I didn't even breathe for a moment. I stepped into the kitchen, quietly turning on the overhead light. Dishes from this morning still sat in the sink. The casserole dish was clean, washed, dried, put away. That was Sadie. She didn't leave messes for anyone else to handle. I opened the fridge. There was a plate with foil labeled in her handwriting. Dad, when you get home. I closed the door without touching it. Her bedroom door was slightly ajar. The hallway creaked as I approached, and I eased it open just enough to look inside. She was asleep, still in the green sweater, curled up on top of the covers, one hand tucked under her cheek, the other gripping the hem of her sleeve. Her boots were beside the bed, unlaced, but lined up neatly. I saw the edge of a tissue box on her nightstand, a couple of crumpled ones next to it. Her phone was still in her hand, the screen dark. On her wrist, her charm bracelet, missing 2 charms she'd been waiting to earn. She hadn't cried herself to sleep. She'd held it in. I walked to the edge of the bed and knelt slowly. The old wood floor creaked again, and she stirred. Dad? Yeah, sweetheart. I'm home. She blinked, eyes adjusting to the low light. What time is it? After midnight. Her voice was groggy. ER crazy. I nodded. You okay? She hesitated. I didn't want to ruin your night. I swallowed. They ruined yours. Sadie looked away. Her eyes landed on the small canvas on her dresser, the one where she'd painted a pine tree with silver snow falling, a school project 2 years ago. Martha had called it cute, then moved on to praise Zoe's ballet recital. I'm sorry, Dad, she said softly. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because she was apologizing. No, I said gently. You don't apologize for being the only decent person in the room. Her lips twitched, almost a smile. I think I knew, she said, that it might not go well. Then why'd you go? Sadie shrugged. I thought maybe this year would be different. That if I tried hard enough, maybe they'd see me. I reached for her hand. I see you. Every day. And it's not your job to make anyone else look closer. Her eyes welled, but she blinked it back. She always blinked it back. Learned that from me, I guess. She yawned and said, I'm really tired. I know. I stood slowly and pulled the blanket over her. She turned onto her side, exhaling like the day had finally left her lungs. As I stepped back into the hallway, I noticed her desk. On top of it sat a small gift bag, white with red ribbon, edges perfectly folded. A tag in her careful lettering read, For Grandma, still unopened. I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at it. That small bag, that cold plate, that folded napkin, symbols of a girl who had shown up, hoping to be wanted. Instead, she had been tolerated, until she wasn't. I pulled a notebook from my work bag and flipped to the back. My pen hovered for a moment, then I wrote, People to call. Martha, Glenn, Amanda, maybe. Then I turned the page. New heading, things to say. She deserved better. No more pretending. If you want us around, you make room. I stopped writing, looked at the napkin again, then back at the fridge, then at the clock. 12:43 a.m. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Holly's name. Me, can you cover me tomorrow? Just one shift. The dots danced. Then her reply, Holly, say no more. Got it. I locked the phone and sat still, not because I was tired, but because I was done waiting. Done hoping someone else would see what I'd spent 16 years raising. She wasn't an obligation. She was the whole damn reason I still had a center. This wasn't just about Christmas. It was about a lifetime of little cuts that finally reached bone. Tomorrow, I wasn't going to work. Tomorrow, I was going to say what I should have said years ago. Morning light filtered through the blinds in lines of gold and gray, cutting across the table like a quiet judgment. I was already dressed, had been for hours. The coffee sat cooling in the pot. Pancakes were on the stove. warm but no longer steaming. The kitchen smelled like maple syrup and something sharper. Resolve, maybe. Or reckoning. On the floor near the window sat a cardboard box. The flaps didn't quite close. A string of red tinsel poked out like it was trying to escape. Sadie was still asleep. I hadn't knocked. Let her rest. I'd been up since before 5. Not because of work, because I'd decided not to go. The message from Holly had come in just after midnight. All covered. Do what you need to do. That was Holly. Efficient and brief. I'd made the pancakes while replaying Christmas mornings in my head. Martha's overdecorated house. The scent of cinnamon candles that never smelled like real cinnamon. Cliff's forced jokes about Santa's budget being tight again this year. Sadie, younger then, would sit on the carpet in her fleece pajamas, clutching a small gift, waiting for permission to open it. Always waiting. Even then, she never asked for much. I looked over at the box again. I'd filled it just after she fell asleep last night. All the decorations Martha had insisted I take, so Sadie wouldn't feel left out. A porcelain reindeer, some glass bells, a cracked ceramic angel from a Christmas 10 years ago. I hadn't wrapped it. I hadn't even cushioned it. It sat near the top, wings chipped. I was planning to drop the whole thing off at Goodwill, or the nearest dumpster. I reached for my phone and tapped through to the contact marked Home. It rang. Then voicemail. Martha's voice, clipped and exact. Leave a message. I waited for the beep. This is Jude, I said, keeping my voice level. What happened yesterday was unacceptable. You told my daughter there was no room for her. That's not something you undo. But you will answer for it. I ended the call. No goodbye. Next, I tapped Glenn's name. It rang twice before he picked up. Hey, he said, voice low like he'd just stepped out of bed or a hangover. Everything all right? Not really, I said. Silence. What's this about? He asked, already defensive. Yesterday, I said. Sadie, you were there. I mean, it wasn't ideal, he replied. But it was chaotic, Jude. Mom was stressed. She told my daughter to leave. She suggested she leave, he said, emphasizing the word like it was a legal loophole. And Sadie didn't seem upset. You didn't ask, I snapped. No one did. He sighed. Look, I didn't organize the guest list. Thomas brought people last minute, and it threw everything off. It wasn't personal. It wasn't accidental either, I said. It was just acceptable. To you. To all of you. Jude, don't turn this into a crusade. It was just one bad evening. For Sadie, it was confirmation. Of what? That she doesn't belong in your version of family. He exhaled, long and low. You're overreacting. I ended the call. The kitchen was quiet again. The box stared at me from the corner. I pushed it slightly with my foot, then sat down at the table, letting my hands rest around my mug. The coffee was cold, but I didn't care. Sadie appeared in the doorway, wrapped in her fleece robe, hair tousled, eyes heavy but open. You're home, she said, surprised. I am. She glanced at the stove. Pancakes? Still warm. Not great, but edible. She nodded and moved toward the plate I'd made her. No words, just the scraping of the chair and the clink of fork against ceramic. I sat across from her, watching, not to study her, but to be there, present, without needing to fix anything. Halfway through her second bite, she looked up. You're not working today. No. Why? Today's for us. She didn't say anything for a moment. Then, okay. She looked back down at her plate, ate in silence. When she was nearly finished, she said, Thanks for staying. I nodded. There's nowhere else I need to be. She looked toward the corner of the room, at the box. What's that? Old decorations, I said. For next year? I shook my head. We're starting over. She didn't smile. but her eyes softened. We didn't need a grand gesture. No dramatic tree-tossing scene or symbolic fireplace burning. Just this. A quiet breakfast, the two of us, and the beginning of a new line being drawn. I stood, picked up both our plates, and carried them to the sink. Behind me, Sadie asked, "Did you call them?" I did. What did you say? I paused, rinsing the plate under warm water. Enough. She nodded. That was all she needed to hear. As I reached to dry my hands, I glanced at the box again. The angel's chipped wing was visible through the half-open flap. I walked over, reached in, and pulled it out. For a second, I held it in my hand, ceramic cold against my palm, heavy in a way that had nothing to do with weight. Then I opened the trash can and dropped it in. It landed with a quiet thunk. No crash, just finality. I texted Glenn at 9:13 a.m. sharp. "We need to talk." He replied 3 minutes later. About what? That told me everything I needed to know. Sadie was sitting on the far end of the couch, her knees drawn up, a blanket around her shoulders, pretending to scroll through her phone. She wasn't scrolling. She was listening. I stood in the kitchen, pacing. The box of decorations still sat where I left it. The angel was gone, but the weight remained. I called. "Hey," Glenn answered, cautious. No pleasantries. "You busy?" I asked. My tone made it clear I didn't care if he was. "I guess not." Silence. Just the hum of our refrigerator and the soft sound of Sadie's thumb tapping the screen. "I want to talk about yesterday," I said. "You mean Christmas?" he asked. "Call it what you want." Glenn sighed. That performative kind of sigh, where the air carries more condescension than breath. "Look, man," he said, "it was crowded. Mom was overwhelmed. You know how she gets. Don't blow this up." I stared at the cracked tile on the floor. One of Sadie's boots rested nearby, still wet at the soles. "She looked at my daughter," I said slowly, and said, "No room for her this year. Maybe next." "I mean, she didn't mean it like that," Glenn replied. "It was just hectic. Last-minute guests. And you know Sadie, she doesn't make a fuss." "That's the point," I said. "She shouldn't have to make a fuss." "She seemed fine when she left," Glenn added. "Did you ask if she was fine?" "She didn't say anything. Neither did you." Silence. She stood in the kitchen holding her plate like a servant. "Glenn, one of your friends made a joke that she was hired help. She left without eating. And not one of you said a damn thing." "Jude, I'm not finished." I didn't raise my voice. I just stopped softening it. "This isn't about being crowded. It's about who gets to matter. It's about who gets made room for. And yesterday, that wasn't my daughter." On the couch, Sadie pulled the blanket tighter. She still didn't look at me, but her grip on the fabric changed. Fingers curled a little tighter. Glenn laughed nervously. "You're making it bigger than it was." "No," I said. "I'm finally seeing it for what it is." Another pause. Then he said, "Maybe she just didn't belong there this year." Silence. Pure, frozen silence. I stood completely still. Let the sentence sit between us like a wound he didn't even know he'd opened. "You know what?" I said finally. "You're right. She didn't. That's not what I meant. She didn't belong," I repeated. "But not because she wasn't good enough. Not because she didn't fit. She didn't belong because that room, that table, that family, you, made it clear there was no space for her. And that's not her failing. That's yours," he stammered. "You know, Mom. I do know, Mom. And I know you. You're just like Dad. You think staying quiet is the same as staying neutral. But silence chooses a side, Glenn. It always has." I remembered that exact tone from when I was 12. He's better off outside. He likes working with his hands. Let Jude be. Back then, it was all couched in kindness. The slow exile of someone who didn't look right sitting still, didn't talk the way they expected. The only difference now was that it wasn't me. It was my daughter. I ended the call without waiting for whatever he was about to say. I didn't want a partial apology or a conditional one. I didn't want a text later saying, "Hope we're good," or "You took that the wrong way." I wanted silence from him now. I wanted that more than anything. I pulled out my phone and opened my contacts, tapped Glenn's name, deleted it. Just like that. Sadie finally looked up from her phone. That was about me, wasn't it? I hesitated, then nodded. She pulled the blanket higher. What did he say? I walked over and sat at the edge of the coffee table, facing her. He said maybe you didn't belong there this year. Her eyes didn't widen. Her mouth didn't move. She didn't even blink. That's what they've always thought, she said softly. No, I said. It's what they've always assumed they could get away with, because we never called it out. She nodded, slow. So, now what? I held her gaze. Now we stop pretending they didn't say it out loud. She looked at the floor. What about next year? I shook my head. We don't wait for next year to be better. We make it different now. Just then, a knock at the door. I stood, confused. It was too early for deliveries, and no one came by unannounced. Sadie turned her head slightly as I opened the door. Holly stood there, a scarf looped around her neck, 2 grocery bags in her hands, breath fogging in the cold. You hungry? She asked. I blinked. You didn't have to. Yeah, I did. She smiled gently. You said today was for the 2 of you, but that doesn't mean you have to do it alone. Sadie looked up from the couch, eyes wide. Holly gave her a small wave. I stepped aside. Come in. Holly walked past me into the kitchen, setting the bags down. Bread, cranberry sauce, a half-roasted chicken, cinnamon rolls, all store-bought, all perfect. As she unpacked, I grabbed my notebook from the counter, flipped past the list, past the page labeled What They Said, started a new one. Title: The Year They Chose to Shrink the Table. Then I wrote the quote in Glenn's voice, word for word. Maybe she just didn't belong there this year. I closed the notebook, set it down, and walked back toward the kitchen. This year, I thought, we'd make a bigger table. The scent of cinnamon and turkey filled the apartment, an odd combination of grocery store rotisserie and whatever Holly had simmering on the stove. Sadie peeked her head around the hallway, still in her oversized hoodie, eyes puffy from too little sleep. What's all this? She asked, voice caught somewhere between suspicion and wonder. An attempt, I said, flipping something that may or may not have been stuffing in a skillet. To make a day not feel like a disaster. She stepped into the kitchen, bare feet soft on the tile. Smells like breakfast got confused and became dinner. Accurate, Holly chimed from behind me, holding a bag of dinner rolls like a prized trophy. Hi, Sadie. Sadie blinked. Hi. There was a knock at the door, then another. Lucas arrived first, balancing a grocery sack in one hand and a small folding table in the other. Backup table, he said by way of greeting, just in case. Right behind him were Toby and Jenna from downstairs, Toby carrying a crock pot that smelled suspiciously like spiced apples and something sweet, Jenna with a tin of cookies under her arm. Within 10 minutes, the apartment looked less like our regular space and more like a mismatched family reunion. Folding chairs appeared out of nowhere. Someone hung a string of white lights around the bookshelf. Holly discovered our Bluetooth speaker and played soft jazz renditions of holiday songs that sounded just off enough to be charming. Sadie stood near the edge of it all, watching, half participant, half observer. Then Lucas leaned down and asked, "Still shooting manual?" Sadie blinked. "Yeah." He pulled a tiny SD card reader from his jacket pocket. Want help transferring to your laptop? Her face lit up just enough. Okay. They sat cross-legged on the floor near the couch. She showed him her last few shots. Moody captures of streetlights and snow. A window reflection of herself, blurred and distant. I like that one, Lucas said, pointing to an image of our apartment balcony with just one chair and frame. Sadie glanced at me. It's titled, Waiting. I swallowed something hard behind my sternum. Meanwhile, Holly and Jenna busied themselves in the kitchen, while Toby held court near the table, regaling Sadie with stories about his early days shooting on film. Back when light meters weren't digital, he said, holding up a finger like a professor. And mistakes cost money. Sadie laughed. Really laughed. The kind that came from the chest, not the throat. I hadn't heard it in days, maybe weeks. She excused herself for a moment, went into her room, and returned holding a framed photo, one I hadn't seen in years. She placed it at the center of the table. It was a picture she'd taken when she was 9, a crooked snowman, lopsided and grinning, one arm made of a bent spatula instead of a branch. No one asked why she chose that one. No one needed to. We sat down to eat, plates full of uncoordinated dishes, turkey slices next to cinnamon rolls, green beans beside pancakes. And yet, it all worked. Sadie leaned close as we passed the cranberry sauce. There's room for everyone here, she whispered. I glanced around the table. Lucas talking softly with Toby, Holly pouring sparkling cider, Jenna adding whipped cream to the pie. This wasn't what I pictured for her. No polished table settings, no matching sweaters. But maybe that was the point. She'd built joy without needing permission. After dinner, while the others cleared plates and made vague noises about board games, Sadie sat across from me, a small box in her hands. From Holly, she said, sliding it toward me. I opened it. Inside was a tiny silver charm in the shape of a camera lens. It's the lens you already have, Sadie said. She just wanted you to see it. I nodded. Words caught somewhere I couldn't quite reach. We washed dishes together, me drying, Lucas scrubbing. At one point, his hand brushed my shoulder briefly. Just a touch. It didn't linger. But it grounded me, like we weren't rushing anywhere, and this moment could stay a while. The apartment was finally quiet again. The smell of cinnamon and gravy still clung to the walls, but the laughter and clinking plates had faded. Everyone had left with hugs and containers of leftovers, promising to do it again soon. In that way people do when they mean it, more than they expected. I stepped onto the balcony to breathe. The December air had sharpened since sunset, and the light Sadie had strung weeks ago flickered lazily along the railing. Then I saw her. Amanda stood by the far corner, arms crossed, coat zipped to her chin. She hadn't knocked. She hadn't texted. She'd just shown up. I leaned on the opposite side of the railing. Neither of us spoke for a moment. I wasn't sure if I should come up, she said. But you did. She nodded. I saw the lights still on. I studied her face. Her lipstick was smudged slightly, her eyes tired, but she didn't look defensive, just uncomfortable. The way someone looks when they know they're stepping into a room they don't own anymore. I didn't agree with what happened, she said finally, but I didn't stop it either. That's a choice too, I said. Amanda looked down. I know. Wind shifted through the balcony slats, rattling a plastic ornament Sadie had clipped to the railing. I told Glenn not to bring those guests, she added. He said they were important for the firm. And Sadie wasn't? I asked. She flinched but didn't answer, which in its own way was an answer. I'm not here to defend it, she said. She trailed off, then regrouped. I've always felt like I was competing with her. That caught me off guard. What? Not directly, Amanda said. Not for your attention. For, I don't know, ease. The way you and Sadie are with each other. It's honest. Even when it's awkward, it's still real. I didn't respond. Amanda laughed, short and sharp. You're probably thinking I've never said anything real in my life. No, I said quietly. But I've never heard you say something you didn't calculate. That hit her. She didn't deny it. Do you know how exhausting it is to be the one who keeps it together all the time? She asked. I did. But I didn't say it. I'm not asking her to forgive me, Amanda continued, softer now. Just to see that I'm trying. I watched her hands, gloved, tense, one gripping the edge of the railing like she needed an anchor. I never thought Amanda had an inner life beyond control and cocktails, I thought. But tonight, she's just human and scared. I nodded. You can talk to her. Amanda looked surprised. Really? If she wants to, you'll have to ask. She nodded, grateful but not relieved. She knew it wasn't a clean slate, just a foot in the door. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small, square box, wrapped in tissue. Handed it to me without meeting my eyes. She made this for Lila, Amanda said. Brought it with her. Left it on the counter when she left. It never got opened. I peeled back the tissue. Inside was a photo frame, hand-painted, unevenly. The kind Sadie made with care, not precision. Little silver stars along one side. The initials L+S at the bottom. Was empty. That's what Sadie gave them, I thought. An empty space. And they left it that way. Amanda looked at the frame like it was heavier than it was. I'll ask her tomorrow, she said, if she wants to talk. I didn't say anything, just nodded again. We stood there a few more seconds, two people from the same system, one finally walking out, the other trying to peek back in through a crack in the door. She stepped toward the stairs. Thanks, Jude, she said. For what? Not slamming the door shut. She left without waiting for a reply. I stayed on the balcony, holding the frame, the stars catching the porch light just slightly. No photo inside, just possibility. Sadie stood by the window, arms crossed, holding the small, unopened box Amanda had returned the night before. Her thumb ran along the edge of the paper, as though she was trying to decide whether to peel it open or leave it sealed for good. She actually remembered it, she said, not quite surprised, but not unaffected either. I looked up from the table. She wants to talk. Sadie didn't turn around. To you? Number to you. That gave her pause. She stared out at the half-frozen parking lot below, a kid dragging a sled across slush, a stray dog sniffing around a bush that hadn't seen life in months. I'll talk to her, she said, but she says it to me. Not about me. Not to you. To me. Agreed. She turned around, box still in hand, and asked, Can we do it on the balcony? I want air between us, just in case. By the time Amanda arrived, coat zipped up again, hair tied back like she meant business. Sadie had already set out 2 folding chairs and a blanket she didn't plan to share. I didn't hover. I stood in the kitchen, close enough to hear the rhythm of voices, but far enough to miss the words. That was the deal. Amanda sat stiffly. Sadie opened the box without ceremony, pulled out the hand-painted frame, and placed it on the railing between them. I made that for Lila, she said flatly. She never got it. Amanda took a deep breath. That's my fault. Sadie didn't speak. I thought I was protecting peace, Amanda said, not hurting anyone. That's always the excuse, isn't it? Sadie replied. The thing people say when they watched it happen and said nothing. Amanda's shoulders tightened. I was afraid of upsetting your grandmother and your uncle and Glenn, so you chose to let me be the one upset instead? Amanda didn't answer right away. Then, yes. I did, Sadie blinked. The wind picked up slightly, fluttering the edge of the blanket on her lap. Amanda leaned forward a little. I never challenged Martha. Ever. Even when I wanted to. Even when I knew something was wrong. Because she has this way of freezing you out. And once you're out, you're really out. And I didn't want to be alone. Sadie looked at her. So instead, you left me alone. Amanda looked down. I did. Sadie's voice stayed calm. You let someone tell me there was no room, and you didn't flinch. Amanda's eyes welled, but she didn't wipe them. I flinched. I just didn't act. That's worse. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Inside, I leaned against the counter, hands pressed flat to the surface. Not interfering, not saving, just listening. I'd spent years assuming Amanda was only what she showed. Composed, rehearsed, too polished to be real. I never considered what it cost her to maintain that image, or who she thought she had to be to stay welcome. But tonight, there was no script, just two people on a balcony, surrounded by cold air and harder truths. Sadie looked at the frame again. There's nothing in it. Amanda nodded. I know. Sadie stood. I'm not asking you to fix what happened. I wouldn't know how. But if you want to be part of what comes next, Sadie said, holding out her hand, you can come in, but only if you keep showing up. Amanda took the hand slowly, like it might vanish. She nodded, just once. They came inside without ceremony. No hugs, no big emotional finale. Just two people returning from a necessary place. As Sadie placed the now opened frame on the counter, she slipped a photo into it. I hadn't seen it before. Her and Lila, age 7, sitting in the grass during a summer picnic. They were laughing. Real, full laughter. The kind that only happens when you forget people are watching. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Lucas, heard your mom's coming by today. You want backup? I texted back. Not yet. But thanks. Sadie looked at the frame one last time and adjusted it by half an inch. There, she said. Now, it's not empty. The doorbell rang at 10:04 a.m. I knew who it was before I opened it. No one else rings once and waits like they're announcing judgment. When I opened the door, Martha stood there, coat buttoned to the collar, gloves on though it wasn't quite cold enough for them. Her posture was impeccable, controlled, defensive. She didn't smile. I didn't invite her in. She stepped inside anyway, like that threshold still belonged to her by default. Her heels clicked softly on the hardwood as she walked 3 feet into the living room, then stopped, as if she wasn't sure whether she'd been welcomed or not. She turned to me. I didn't come to argue. Good, I said. We stood in silence for a few seconds. Then she took off one glove and looked around the apartment like she was seeing it for the first time. The string lights Sadie had left up, the mismatched chairs around the table, the photograph of a crooked snowman still framed on the counter. I didn't mean to hurt her, she said. It was chaotic. We didn't expect extra guests. There was confusion. You didn't mean not to, I replied. That's worse. She blinked, the only crack in the surface. I walked over to the counter, pulled the small spiral notebook from the drawer, flipped to the page I'd marked. Then I read it. There's no room for her this year, maybe next. Martha stood straighter. You're quoting me. Exactly. Because Sadie did too, and she won't forget it. I misspoke. No, I said calmly. You spoke exactly what you meant. You just didn't expect anyone to repeat it back. Martha looked down at her gloves, turned one over in her hands. She doesn't understand. She understands more than you ever gave her credit for. That silenced her again. She dressed up, I said. She cooked for you. She made a gift for Lila. And you made her feel like a visitor in a place she'd been trying her whole life to belong to. Martha looked around the room again, her eyes landing on the empty chair by the window. "I was trying to manage things," she said, more quietly now. "There were too many people. I didn't think she'd mind." She minded. "I didn't think she'd leave. But you made it easier for her to." We stood there, the weight of years between us, the history of every half comment, every comparison, every praise given to another child, while mine learned how to swallow silence. "She's a good girl," Martha said. "She's a young woman," I corrected. "And if you want her in your life, there will be space for her, every time. No more guessing, no more earning, no more auditions for love." Martha looked up. I could see her chewing that sentence like it tasted foreign. "She's had to work so hard for scraps of your attention," I said, "and I let it happen. That stops now." I expected resistance. What I got was silence, which was louder than any defense. After a long beat, she nodded. Just once. "When she's ready," she said, "I'd like to talk to her." I didn't promise that she would be. I didn't offer to smooth it over. I just nodded back. She turned to leave. As she passed the fridge, she paused. Her eyes lingered on the flyer Sadie had taped there, a printout for her upcoming photo exhibit at the community center. It had a picture of Sadie holding her camera, half smiling, sun in her eyes. Martha looked at it for a long moment. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "She's good." I didn't reply. When the door closed behind her, I walked back to the counter, reached into my back pocket, and pulled out the napkin I'd been carrying since Christmas Eve. "No room for her," it said, still faintly crumpled. I stared at it one last time, then slowly, deliberately, tore it in half, and let the pieces fall into the trash. Snow swirled in lazy spirals outside the diner window, dusting the sidewalk with just enough white to make everything look quieter than it really was. Inside, the six of us sat around a rounded corner booth with red vinyl seats and chipped formica. Martha sat stiffly at one end, coat still on. Cliff beside her, his hands folded loosely on the table. Glenn picked at the edge of his napkin. Amanda sat between him and Sadie, her posture relaxed, but her eyes tracking everything. Sadie was beside me, back straight, expression neutral, but her hand brushed mine under the table once. Just once. It was enough. I took a slow breath, looked at all of them, and began. "We're not here to rehash what happened," I said. "We're here to decide what happens next." No one spoke at first. A waitress came by, dropped off water, and left like she'd seen 100 family summits and knew better than to linger. I continued, voice steady. "We've all got patterns. Some of them go back years. But that doesn't mean we have to keep repeating them." Still no reply, but no interruptions either. "I'm not here to make speeches, and I'm not here to shame anyone. I just want it said out loud that from now on, if we're going to be a family, we're going to do it with intention." Martha's hands twitched slightly in her lap. I glanced at Sadie. She nodded. "I don't need perfection," she said, voice clear. "I just need not to be invisible." Amanda's eyes welled briefly, and she placed her hand on the table, open, an unspoken offer of solidarity. Martha looked at Sadie, then away. Cliff cleared his throat. "I didn't know what was said that day," he said, looking at no one in particular. "But I should have asked." Sadie didn't reply. She didn't need to. Amanda spoke next. "We need rules," she said. "Real ones. Boundaries." I smiled slightly. "Already ahead of you." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a folded page. "Equal attention to all grandkids. No comments about clothes, weight, interests. If someone speaks up, we listen. No interrupting. No explaining it away. And no more. That's just how she is." That one landed on Martha. She blinked, but didn't flinch. "Holiday hosting rotates," Amanda added. No more centralizing everything at one house. Monthly check-ins, I said. Low pressure, but consistent. Glenn finally spoke. That's a lot. It's also bare minimum, Sadie said softly. He didn't argue, but he didn't contribute more either. Then Martha spoke. Her voice was quieter than I expected. I was wrong, she said. I was wrong about how I treated you. You were always worthy of a seat. Sadie looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't closure. But it was the first honest thing I'd heard from Martha in years. I glanced around the table. No one was yelling. No one had stormed out. No plates broken. No side conversations to undercut the one that mattered. For the first time in years, no one raised voices. No one left early. That alone was new. The waitress returned, took our orders. Sadie got hot chocolate. Cliff asked for a turkey sandwich. Glenn muttered something about soup. It was awkward. It was imperfect. It was a beginning. As we waited, Sadie pulled a napkin from the dispenser, borrowed my pen, and started sketching. After a few minutes, she turned it toward me. A camera lens, rough but precise. Around it, she'd written in careful script. Now, in focus. I smiled, folded the napkin, and tucked it into my pocket. My phone buzzed. Lucas, coffee tomorrow? Just us. I typed back, sure. No family drama, just caffeine. Sadie leaned her head lightly against my shoulder. I didn't say anything. I just stayed there, in the booth, in the moment, in a room where, for once, there was finally space for all of us. Lucas texted me the address 15 minutes before I left the house. Not the usual coffee shop, not even his place. Just, meet me at the East Trailhead. You need air more than caffeine. He wasn't wrong. The snow had softened overnight, turning from sharp crust to a blanket that gave slightly under each step. Colorado Springs had that kind of winter, the kind where snow lingered but the sun still showed up most days, just to remind you it wasn't all weight. When I got to the trailhead, he was already there, hands in his coat pockets, wool cap pulled low, scarf wrapped half messy like he hadn't bothered to check the mirror. You look like a man avoiding small talk, I said. He grinned. I look like a man who knows when not to make it. We started walking, slow, no rush, boots crunching through the snow in a rhythm that made the silences between us feel like conversation. For the first 5 minutes, we didn't speak at all. Then he said, You know, I've seen you angry. I've seen you worried. I've seen you tired. But yesterday, at the diner, you were calm, and that scared me more than anything. I smiled slightly. Calm is just where all the noise goes to die. Lucas gave a soft laugh. I get that. The trail curved gently toward the creek, which hadn't frozen over completely. Water still moved beneath the thin glaze. Slow, persistent. Sadie okay? He asked. She's stronger than I am, I said. She had to be. We walked a few more paces. Lucas glanced over. You're always rescuing people. That's what you do. ER, family, everything. But have you ever let anyone rescue you? I didn't answer right away. I'm not good at needing things, I said finally. He nodded. Doesn't mean you don't. I stopped walking and looked out at the water. I've spent so long building walls, I forgot what doors look like. Lucas didn't move closer, didn't try to fill the space with anything artificial. He just stood there, next to me, letting the cold air carry our silence. Then he touched my arm. Not a grab, not a pull. Just contact. A reminder that I was there, that he was. I didn't step away. It wasn't about romance, not yet. It was about being seen, which honestly felt rarer. We kept walking. No declarations, no forced laughter, just boots in snow and the kind of quiet that didn't press on your chest. By the time we looped back to the lot, the sky had started to soften from silver to pale blue. I looked over at him. "So, this is the part where you ask if I want to do this again?" I said. Lucas shrugged. "Only if you want to." I nodded. "Yeah, I think I do." He smiled. "Good. Then let's keep walking. You and me. See where it goes." Back home, Sadie was curled on the couch with her sketch pad open. She looked up as I came in, studied me for a beat, then raised one brow. Was that a real smile? I opened the fridge, reached for a bottle of water, and said, "Might have been." She smirked, didn't push further. On my desk, just beneath my keys, was a sticky note I hadn't left there. Room. Reserved. Sadie's handwriting. No punctuation. No flourish. Just those 2 words. I didn't ask when she wrote it. Didn't need to. Some things you just let sit quietly, exactly where they belong. Sadie walked through the door with her cheeks flushed from the wind and a faint smell of dust and old curtain rods clinging to her hoodie. "Grandpa helped me hang the blackout curtains for the dark room," she said, setting her camera bag down by the couch. I looked up from my laptop. "He showed?" "Right at 10, just like he said. Tools in a duffel bag, thermos of black coffee, and a screwdriver in his shirt pocket like he was reporting for duty." Her tone was even, but her eyes carried something else. Curiosity, maybe even a little warmth, the kind of expression she wore when she didn't know how to name what she felt yet. "He didn't say much," she added, tugging off her gloves. "Just kept handing me tools and nodding like I was doing it right, even when I wasn't." I smiled. "That's Cliff's language for love." She paused. "I think I get that now." She walked into the kitchen and opened the fridge, rummaging for leftovers. I watched her as she moved, calmer than she'd been in weeks. No more bracing herself for a text that might carry judgment. No more calculating silence in rooms that should have felt safe. "He asked about the photography exhibit," she said, mouth half full with cold macaroni. "Didn't even ask if he was invited, just asked what kind of lighting the room had." I raised an eyebrow. "He building a better spotlight?" She shrugged. "Maybe." Later that afternoon, she sat at her desk, editing photos, the room quiet except for the occasional click of her mouse and the soft hum of the heater. I walked past her room and paused. She turned her monitor toward me. "Look." The photo was black and white. Cliff stood on a small step stool, arms up, adjusting the curtain rod. The light hit just enough of his profile to show the furrow in his brow, the focus in his hands. "He didn't even know I took it," she said. "I wanted it that way." There was no posing, no pretending, just presence. "Can I print it?" she asked. "You should." She did. That evening she framed it and wrote a small caption on the bottom in clean handwriting. "You showed up." It wasn't loud praise. It wasn't a second chance declared. It was quiet recognition. And for Cliff Halter, that might have been louder than any speech. As she taped the photo label into place, I noticed the sticky note next to it. The one I'd torn in half weeks ago, "No room for her," now taped back together with a new label across the bottom. Past, not present. Sadie didn't say anything about it. She just left it there beside the photo, like the two belonged together. Maybe they did. I stood in the doorway for a while, letting the weight of small healing settle, letting myself believe that this wasn't temporary, that some things broken don't need to be erased, just reframed. She glanced up at me, then looked away quickly, like she didn't want to seem like she was asking permission. "Do you think it'd be weird if I invited him to the exhibit?" she asked, without looking at me. "No," I said. "I think it'd be honest." She nodded once. The house felt smaller than I remembered, or maybe I'd grown in the ways that matter. I walked through the front door without knocking. Martha had said I didn't need to. "It's still your home," she insisted. But we both knew that wasn't true anymore. Maybe it never really was. The air smelled like lemon polish and cardboard. Boxes lined the hallway, labels in Martha's handwriting. Kitchen, fragile. Books, donate. Photos, keep. I stepped into the dining room, my boots quiet on the old hardwood floor. The long oak table was still there, though most of the chairs were gone. Just 3 left, spaced oddly, like someone had started packing and then lost the nerve. The table looked thinner, narrower. The wood had dulled, the once glossy finish now dull beneath years of elbows, and wine glasses and holiday platters that never quite made space for everyone. I walked slowly around it, let my hand trail the edge. How many years had I sat here, quiet at one end, Sadie beside me, while the noise swirled on the other side of the table? The good grandkids, the well-behaved cousins, the ones who danced and sang and said the right things. Sadie never competed. She just tried to earn a seat. I sat down in one of the remaining chairs. It creaked. Martha entered behind me, wiping her hands on a towel, though they didn't look dirty. Her posture was softer today, less armor. "We're donating most of the furniture," she said, "keeping a few pieces that matter." I nodded. She walked to the far corner, lifted the edge of a box lid. "I bought new chairs," she added, glancing at me. "After Christmas. Too late, I know." "There wasn't a shortage of chairs," I said quietly. "There was a shortage of will." Martha flinched slightly, then nodded. She sat across from me, hands folded in her lap. I thought I was protecting tradition, keeping things in balance. But balance without kindness isn't anything to be proud of. For once, I didn't argue. I didn't have to. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch, the kind jewelry stores use. She placed it on the table between us. "I found these," she said. She gave them to me, a few years ago. I told her I'd add them to the family charm bracelet. But I never did. I opened the pouch. Inside were 3 tiny silver charms, a miniature camera, a maple leaf, and a tiny lighthouse. "She deserves more than space," Martha said, her voice low. "She deserves a spotlight." I looked at her, really looked. For the first time in years, she didn't seem like the gatekeeper of the family. She seemed like a woman trying to let go of what she thought was control and hold on to what might still be saved. She didn't defend, didn't reframe, didn't redirect. She just handed over what was hers to give. I closed the pouch and slid it into my pocket. We didn't speak much after that. I helped her move a few boxes to the garage, wrapped a lamp in newspaper, carried a bag of old linens to the trunk of her car. Before I left, I walked back into the dining room, looked at the table one last time. My eyes landed on a folding chair tucked into the corner. Wooden. Old, but sturdy. I picked it up. "Mind if I take this one?" I asked. Martha looked surprised, then nodded. "Of course." I carried it to the car. No ceremony. Just wood and hinges and years. As I turned the ignition, my phone buzzed. Voicemail. "Hey, it's Lucas. Just thinking of you. No need to call back, unless you want to." I smiled without realizing I had. The chair thudded gently in the trunk as I pulled away. A chair no one had offered to Sadie. A chair no one had noticed was missing. Now it was going somewhere new. The community gallery smelled like paint and lemon cleaner, with a faint undertone of coffee from the pop-up table in the corner. Strings of white lights crisscrossed the ceiling, glowing soft above a crowd that hummed with polite conversation and the sound of winter coats being shrugged off. Sadie stood near the far wall, adjusting the frame on her final print. Her hair was half-pinned, one stray curl falling into her eyes. She brushed it back with the kind of ease that comes from not needing everything to be perfect. It was her first exhibit, a dozen photographs, a theme she refused to name, though when I asked, she simply said, "You'll see." She hadn't let me preview the final piece. People had started trickling in, Holly first, her arms full of programs and energy, followed by Lucas, who slipped me a cup of coffee without a word, just a quiet nod. His presence always landed gently, like a jacket draped across your shoulders without fanfare. Toby and Jenna arrived with a tray of shortbread cookies shaped like cameras, which Sadie pretended to roll her eyes at, but later slipped 2 into her coat pocket. Amanda came in with Lila, helped her take off her scarf, then joined Glenn at the back of the room. He didn't say much. Glenn rarely did, but he was there. And that counted for something. Cliff came in last, holding the same folding chair he'd carried out of the old house last week. He didn't set it down. He just stood beside it like it was part of him now. Then Martha walked in, holding a bouquet of fresh tulips. They weren't Sadie's favorite flowers, but they were real. And that, too, counted. Sadie gave her a nod, brief but warm. The room filled slowly. More neighbors, a few teachers, the woman from the local arts council who'd helped secure the wall space. No speeches, no podium. Just Sadie, stepping forward quietly and saying, "Thank you for coming." One by one, people circled the room, stopping, smiling, some tilting their heads, some just standing in front of a photo for a long time without saying anything. Near the center wall was the shot she took of Cliff, the one where he was adjusting the curtain rod, unaware of her camera. Beneath it, in her handwriting, "You showed up." But it was the final print, the one no one had seen, that pulled everyone in. It was a wide-angle shot of our living room from Christmas night. The table was mismatched, covered with disposable plates and dollar store napkins. Holly was mid-laugh, Lucas blurry on the edge of the frame, Toby pouring cider. Sadie herself not in the picture, but you could feel her behind the lens. There was no polish to it, just real light, real joy, real space. I stood in front of it, stunned by the honesty. Martha approached slowly, standing beside me. "That was your table?" I nodded. "Still is." She didn't say anything else, just looked. Below the frame, in careful block letters, was the title. "Room Made It" hung next to "You Showed Up." No one asked her to explain it, but we all understood. As people trickled out, the woman from the Arts Council approached Sadie. They spoke in hushed tones. Then Sadie turned to me, eyes wide. "She wants me to apply for a mentorship program," she whispered. 3 months, one-on-one with a local photojournalist. I felt something inside me loosen, like a knot coming undone, not with a snap, but with breath. "Do it," I said. Later, as we packed up, frames into boxes, cookie crumbs into napkins, Lucas handed me a small folded piece of paper. "Dinner soon," it read. "No emergencies, just us." I smiled. I think I can manage that. The last thing I did before we turned off the gallery lights was walk back to Sadie's final photo. Room made. I looked at it again. This wasn't tradition. This was truth. And it was more beautiful. June crept in like it had nothing to prove. The air was thick with warmth that didn't press, just wrapped itself around the edges of the day. The string lights Sadie had hung across the balcony months ago still flickered, some bulbs dimmer now, but none out. We sat side by side in the old folding chairs. The same one I'd taken from my parents' house still creaked under me, just a little, like it remembered everything it used to carry. Between us, 2 mason jars of lemonade, sweating onto the railing. Around us, the container garden Sadie had started in early spring, now overgrown in the best way. Tomato vines curling toward the sky, basil spilling over its pot, marigolds bold and unapologetic. Neither of us had said anything in a while, and that was okay. She spoke first. "I used to think being quiet meant being overlooked." I turned to look at her. She didn't flinch, just stared out past the railing like she was still trying to figure out what that meant. "Now you know," I said. "It just means you're listening." She smiled. A small one, but real. We talked then, about the small things first. How the basil plant had somehow survived 2 hailstorms. How Toby and Jenna were starting a composting class downstairs. How Lucas had gotten promoted, but hadn't told anyone except her. Then college. She was thinking of applying to the arts program out of state. Somewhere with mountains, but not our kind. Bigger. Wilder. "I'm not asking for permission," she said gently. "You shouldn't. And I'm not asking if you'll be okay. I'll find out," I said. "That's the deal." She nodded, satisfied. There was a pause. Then she reached into her hoodie pocket and pulled out something small and silver. Placed it in my hand. It was a charm. A flame. Tiny. Etched with detail. "For the fire you started," she said. "For us." I held it between my fingers, the way you hold something you're not quite ready to let go of. She added it to her bracelet without ceremony, just a click, like it belonged. Inside, I'd already picked the photo for the last frame. I'd printed it last week, though I hadn't told her. It was from the gallery opening. Sadie, laughing with Holly and Lucas, her head tilted back, her camera in her lap. Light caught in the curve of her cheek, not staged, just real. I would hang it beside the others before the night was over. The sun dipped low, casting shadows across the balcony. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Sadie stood, stretched, then reached for her camera. "Hey, Dad, smile." I did, not because she asked, but because I meant it. And this time, there was more than room. There was light. I used to think healing would look like a big moment, a speech, a hug, something that shifts the sky. But it didn't. It came in pieces. Quiet ones. It came when Sadie stopped asking if she belonged. It came when Cliff showed up with tools and no explanations. It came when Amanda sat still and listened instead of defending. And maybe it came when I learned that speaking up doesn't have to be loud. It just has to be clear. We didn't fix everything. Some silences are still there. Some wounds leave their mark no matter how many good days come after. But what we have now is honest. It's ours. There are still Sunday mornings when I stare at the folding chair near the door and remember the first time Sadie didn't have a seat. But now that chair stays open, on purpose. It's a reminder. Make room, always. Not out of guilt, but out of choice. People talk a lot about family like it's a given. But I've learned it's also a decision. You show up. You choose to see. You keep choosing, even when it's uncomfortable. And somewhere along the way, that choice builds something stronger than tradition. It builds a home. What we tolerate teaches others how to treat us. Silence, when used to avoid conflict, can become permission for harm. But setting boundaries, with calm and clarity, can heal more than just one heart. In family, love isn't measured by closeness, but by effort, fairness, and respect. Speak up. Make room. And never assume the table is too full to add one more chair. If this story brought you comfort or reflection, we'd be honored if you'd like the video and subscribe to our channel. We share stories that heal, one chair at a time. Take a moment to explore more family tales. We might just have one that speaks to you.